Hello and welcome to my channel Malavika's Magic. Today I'll be sharing with you my views on verbal communication. So let us start by understanding the meaning and the types. When we use words while communicating, we say that we are using verbal communication. Now, verbal communication could be in two forms. One is oral. In oral communication, we select different situations. For example, it could be face to face, or it could be in telephonic conversations where we share our thoughts, we present our ideas and share information as well as share our feelings. Then the next type is a written form. In the written form, we you tend to send messages, which could be in the form of orders or instructions or even suggestions. Now, both these types of forms of communication, they are called as methods or the medium of communication, and the method is selected by the sender while initiating the process of communication. Now, the sender selects the method on the basis of the purpose of communication as well as the audience and the size of the audience. So the sender normally tries to have a better understanding of the audience before he starts, preparing for his information that he has to convey, and this helps the audience to decide, which will be a better means of communication or a better method or medium of communication. Now there is another medium which is called as non-verbal, but this we'll be discussing in the next video. So let us now first start with oral communication by understanding some of the examples. So we communicate using oral communication when we give presentations, when we go for teleconferencing and video conferencing, for interviews and business meetings, and then telephone calls, as well as informal conversation. In all these examples that I've stated, the sender's duty is to plan his information, and then he also needs to structure his information so that the receivers are not confused, and the receivers they retain the information for a longer period of time. So having understood this, let us move on to the benefits of oral communication. So there are many benefits. I'll be dealing with a few of them. It is less expensive, and that is why people prefer to use oral communication. Then it saves time, and there is immediate feedback. And this immediate feedback actually helps the sender to understand the receivers better, as well as modify and rectify his or her message to suit the understanding of the receivers. And in the process, the sender could also try and use the mother tongue of the receiver, and also try and use the colloquial language, so that it is easily retained, and easily the receivers can respond to the information. And then personal contact is possible, as you can develop personal relationship when you have a one-to-one communication with the receivers. Oral communication can be very persuasive, that is, convince the receiver to accept your viewpoint, because your perspective is always dependent on your experience, and you can always share your experience with the receivers, so that the receivers can easily understand and accept your viewpoint. And then the cooperative spirit can be developed. You can share information, you can discuss, and you can come to a better understanding, and you can collaborate with each other in terms of ideas. You can collaborate in terms of trying out new things, and that is possible in oral communication. It is economical, and therefore people prefer to use oral communication in comparison to written communication. So having understood the benefits, let us now move on to the drawbacks of oral communication. So the first, I would say that there is greater scope for errors in oral communication. Now, what happens is, usually when the sender is communicating with the receiver, the sender sometimes does not take care of the non-verbal signals that he is transmitting. So if the sender is not consciously making use of the non-verbal signals, so sometimes it can be misleading, and that miscommunication could arise in the process. And sometimes also, as the sender does not give importance to the punctuation, so the problem could arise. The receivers could face difficulty in understanding the information. Then the next is it is not useful for long distance, because in long distance communication we are dependent on a particular instrument or a system or a device, and there is a possibility that there could be, there could be problems in the device, there could be problems in the instrument, there could be network problems, and that could disrupt the information that is communicated through oral means or oral medium. Then comes the lack of responsibility. Usually the sender does not owe responsibility, because he can easily deny having uttered the message, as it is not recorded. And then, of course, you have lengthy messages that is conveyed through oral form. For example, while giving instructions, when the superior in an organization gives instructions to his subordinates, sometimes the instructions could be so lengthy that it might be difficult for the receivers to actually, retain all the information, and thus it could be very, confusing for the receivers. So the sender, has a habit of going on and on, of sending messages or imparting information. It becomes difficult for the sender to analyze or to find out when he or she has to stop, thus it could sometimes it could be very boring, as well as it could be very difficult for the receivers to actually grasp the information, and thus there could be problems in the process of communication. It can be easily forgotten, as it is not recorded most of the time. Of course, during this pandemic, we have been recording oral communication, but then otherwise, in normal situations, it is not recorded, and therefore it cannot be, you cannot go back to the information, you cannot listen to the information again and again, and thus, there is a tendency that the receivers can forget the information, will not remember the information, unless, of course, the receiver decides to write down the points that he has heard. And then there is no legality. The information that is passed through the oral means cannot be stored or cannot be used for further reference, and that is why it cannot be used for legal purposes either. It is imprecise, and that is why it can lead to misunderstanding. Having understood the drawbacks of oral communication, let us now move on to written communication. The process of conveying through written symbols is called as written communication, and here we give a lot of importance to the grammar, as well as punctuation, as well as to the word choice. So it is very important that in written communication we use the formal language, and we tend to give very lot of importance to the words, because the words have to be acceptable in formal English or formal language. Then the colloquial words, does not have a place in written communication, unless, of course, you are using it for some specific purpose. Therefore, we can say that written communication does not have the amount of flexibility that oral communication, in oral communication is possible. Let us now understand some of the examples. We communicate using the written form while we are using emails or letters, fax messages, then postcards, proposals, telegrams, internet websites. So having said this, let us find out what are the benefits of written communication. So there are many benefits, of course. I'll be dealing with a few of them. It is suitable for long distance, and there's a permanent record of evidence. The receiver has sufficient time to think, act, and react, and proper delegation of responsibility is possible. And of course, it can be sent to many persons at a single time, and it is used as legal document because it can be used for future reference, and the information can be stored for a longer period of time, and it helps in defining goals. So having understood the benefits of written communication, let us now move on to the drawbacks. So the first drawback, I would say that the confidential information cannot be passed using the written means or the written form, and it is more expensive as compared to oral communication. there is wastage of time because there is a delayed feedback, and sometimes the author may not receive a direct feedback. It will be an indirect feedback in the form of the increase in sales of his book. And then of course there's lack of direct relations, and there's lack of flexibility, as well as it is useless for the illiterate. So having understood this, I would say that I would like to thank you all for being patient listeners. I would also like to remind you that I have uploaded a quiz in the description box. So kindly have a look at it, as well as I would also like to tell you that if you have not subscribed to my channel yet, please subscribe so that you can get the recent updates. Thank you once again.